Here it is, video number 2 covering rings. When to pierce with them. Right now. Helix piercings. Helix is this ridge that goes around the outside of your ear. It can, when we talk about helix piercings, it can mean a couple of different things, including like the more traditional one that goes behind the flap, the ones that actually go through, straight through the ridge at whatever angle it is, and also forward helixes. Forward helixes, of course, need to be done with stud jewelry. No way around it. It's not going to work with a ring. During the healing process, there's too much twisting. There's not enough room in there with your anatomy, unless your flap sticks straight out, which I doubt it does, to heal out properly with a ring. That you definitely need a stud. However, the more traditional helix, which goes straight perpendicular to the ear or to the face, is going to be a better option to do with a ring initially. With depending on the position of the ear, generally they can do pretty well with rings unless they're more vertical. More vertical it gets, the more a stud style piece of jewelry is going to be better. Continuing on the outside or down towards the bottom to the lobe. Lobes have been pierced with rings for years. There's absolutely no reason that it needs to be done with a post-style piece of jewelry. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. It really depends on how deep you're going into the lobe, the thickness of your lobe, because they do vary in size and thickness, of what's going to work best. Antitrachus, this ridge on the front of your ear right here, that if you take your thumb, put it against your lobe and then squeeze down that part right in there. Best done with a curved barbell in most cases. It really depends on the anatomy. Sometimes they can be done with labret studs or straight posts, but usually not with rings. Trachus piercings. Trachus piercings do fairly well with rings. The biggest issue is getting the jewelry flat enough that it's going to heal properly. The other issue is that you have enough room that the ring can lay in there comfortably without having any pressure added to it. Dave piercings. Dave piercings, which is if you follow the helix down into this area in the center of your ear, right next to your ear canal. Dave piercings, I personally think that and have found that doing them with a ring initially tends to heal better. It gives it all that extra room for discharge. You don't have anything against the piercing. Usually when you pierce with a barbell, it has to be extremely oversized or otherwise you can't even get the ends on. So with that particular piercing, I definitely suggest doing it with a ring. Another one would be rooks. Rooks, it really depends on the shape of the rook, but it's my experience the rings seem to heal faster and be less traumatic. I forgot one important piercing, so intersect this. Conch piercings. Conch piercings are best done with straight or standard labret studs. You can do them with rings, but they do need to be a very large piece of jewelry to allow it to wrap around the outside of the ear. It's going to have a lot more contact and tend to be grumpier longer. So with that one, it's kind of a flip of the coin, but generally, it's my experience, the labret studs work better. Now back to DaVo. So let's move on to the face. Eyebrow piercings, long time I've been doing them. They've had a bad reputation for migrating. That reputation didn't seem to start until after everybody started piercing them with barbells. Barbells, and it really depends on the shape of the brow. If it's a pronounced brow, a ring that goes into the piercing or into the piercing area is going to have better success than a barbell that's straight that's going to add that pressure outward. It'll also cause the piercing sometimes to form more like a loop, a flesh loop, than an actual piercing. So, rings with that one, and if you're concerned about the ring getting caught or you want that barbell look, I really suggest if you do switch jewelry that it's a curved barbell. Nostrils. Nostrils are another one that it really depends on the anatomy. It needs to be flat enough inside that area inside the nostril and also have enough room to wrap comfortably without any tension being added to the piercing around the bottom of your nose. So they need to be pierced with a slightly larger ring than maybe is needed. The biggest thing to avoid is really super small diameters like 5/16 and 1/4 inch, because it's going to put too much pressure on the piercing and it is definitely going to cause issues. So it comes down to anatomy once again. Septum piercings do best especially with rings or circular style jewelry. I've done them with barbells in the past. They healed out fine, not an issue, but it kind of, I don't understand why you'd want to wear a straight barbell in there. Maybe it's just me. Oral piercings. With oral piercings, there's really only one piercing you can do with a ring, and that would be lip piercings. And when you do it with rings, it does need to be more outside of the mouth, more of like at an angle like this, opposed to with labres where you do them more straight on, like so. The reason being is that if you put a ring in there and you have that straight angle, you have to have a ring that wraps all the way around the piercing, which will come in contact with those teeth and gum that are sitting there. It increases that contact. If you do it more outside the lip, so it's more at an angle, then you're not going to have as much contact with teeth and gums. Horizontals, I have done them or vertical labres, as they've been called. I have done those with rings, had them heal out successfully. The only problem with them is sometimes they'll want to tip one way or the other. I do prefer to do them with rings, just basically because I think the longer barbells that need to be pierced to allow for swelling on that particular piercing are extremely uncomfortable. But they do take a little extra care, but they will heal out fine, and then switch out to a curved barbell after it heals. Things you don't want to do is tongue piercings. Tongue piercings do not work well with rings. You've got to keep in mind the depth of the piercing and trying to wrap a round piece of jewelry through that. It just doesn't work. I know people do the tip of the tongue, which I personally don't advise doing, just basically because there's a lot of risk to damage the teeth and etc. So it's not a good idea. Some of the piercings, I know some people are going to be like, oh, you skipped that. I don't do the mouth frenum style piercings such as smileys and etc. I don't really think they're a good idea. They seem to kind of be problematic. They do fine for a short period of time and then suddenly start flaring up. The other issue is having anything on your gums that's directly against your teeth or at that gum line can cause issues. The ones that are under the tongue, they seem kind of pointless to me. It's another one I don't do. And I have had people come in to have them removed because somewhere around 3 to 4 years, it just started flaring up for no apparent reason. The jewelry was on there so tight it was impossible to remove the jewelry on their own. Cheek piercings definitely need post jewelry. Cheek piercings are one of those piercings that I generally will go through a big, long discussion about risk before I'll even do them. They are not a easy heal. They are not a common piercing, and they have a lot of issues and side effects. So if you are considering getting your cheeks done, go and talk to your piercer and get a lot of details and do your research before you get it done. Moving down to the torso piercings. Nipple piercings. Nipple piercings can be done with a ring, have been done with a ring for an extremely long period of time. Since the beginning of modern piercing, in fact. I've done thousands upon thousands, probably tens of thousands of nipples with rings and had them heal out with absolutely no problem whatsoever. The key to it is that jewelry needs to be wide enough so that the area that's inside the piercing is as flat as possible. There are extreme advantages to doing with a barbell, especially if you're well endowed or there's a lot of pressure on the nipple. The ring does take up a lot more real estate, and it takes a little bit more care as far as keeping items away from the piercing during the healing process. Navels. I covered this a little bit in the last episode or last video. Navels, it really depends on your anatomy. If you have a deep navel that has that natural, perfect ridge, in most cases, piercing with a ring is a better option. However, if you are going to want to wear that popular curved barbell with the two balls on both ends and the large gem settings, it really needs to be pierced with that initially, because when we do it with that type of jewelry, instead of doing it more inside the navel and equal with that lobe, just like we do an ear or a nostril or anything else, we tend to do it more at an angle to allow that end with the shiny jewel in it to stick out of the navel more often and not be buried deep inside the navel. So that is something you need to discuss with your piercer. Female genital piercings. Some that you definitely don't want to do with a ring. First one being is you definitely do not want to do, actually the only one, now that I think about it, the one you definitely don't want to do with a ring is a Christina. Where it's located at and having that large of a piece of jewelry is just asking for trouble. Christinas definitely need to be done with a curved barbell. Clitoral hoods, horizontal. You want a circular piece of jewelry just basically because of how that piercing works and how it fits into the anatomy. Vertical clitoral hoods, I've done both. I've had success with both. They seem to heal out exactly the same. With the rings, there is more contact clothing, etc. So do expect that. And kind of like the nipple where I was talking about earlier, you do want to wear loose-fitting clothing and keep things away from it. However, even with a barbell, you need to do that. I have had clients where we've pierced with a ring initially, and then they've came back after it healed and switched out to a curved barbell, and then a few days later came back and said, can we put the ring back in? I liked it better. Labias, minoras, and majoras, inners or outers. Basically, traditionally, they are done with rings. They're usually a thicker gauge, usually a 12 gauge. The problem with rings in that area is for long-term wear, you really want to find the lightest material you possibly can. In most cases, titanium is going to be your best bet. They can be done with straight barbells. It seems like they're very clumsy and tend to get caught more than the rings do. The rings kind of just fit more into the natural flow of that part of your anatomy. Triangle piercings. You really have to have the anatomy for that one. And I really do advise you to consider talking to your piercer at length and doing your research before you get it done. Those rings work really well with, especially depending on the shape of your genitals. May have to actually wrap around in some cases around that area where the are basically almost outside of and kind of sits between the labia minoras and labia majoras. So it really comes down to anatomy. It's a very anatomy-specific piercing, and it's something you definitely need to consult somebody on. Male genitalia. There are a few piercings that I don't do, such as aphedalia, I'm probably mispronouncing it, and amples. There's a lot of reasons why I don't do that. It basically comes down to I wasn't trained to do them, and I don't feel comfortable experimenting on clients. I do possess the ability to do them. I have done the research. I just don't feel comfortable doing them, and to be honest with you, it comes up very rarely. If you're in the Des Moines area and you're considering that piercing, I can give you suggestions in nearby cities where you can get that done. Otherwise, don't come to me and expect me to do it. Prince Alberts. First off, I don't see the point of reverse PAs. They seem silly to me, but those definitely need to be done with rings. Regular Prince Alberts, my experience, rings seem to be more giving. You can do them with curved barbells. It's going to have a slightly lower profile, but there's a couple issues with the curved barbells. Well, three mainly. First one is it has to be sized when you're erect. No way around it. You need that extra room. The second one being is that the ball needs to be larger in the front, or otherwise you're going to wake up some mornings with that ball inside your urethra, which is not a comfortable way to start the day. No way around it. The other thing is the overall weight of curved barbells. They tend to be heavier, they tend to cause more stretching of the piercing and more abuse of the piercing during the healing process. Rings, they give that extra room. They're a little bit lighter and easier to deal with initially while you're healing it. And other thing is you don't have to worry about the balls unscrewing and landing in the toilet where they always do. Frenums. Frenums need to be done with barbells. No way around it. Rings, you can do them with rings, but they tend to not, the piercing tends to be a lot thinner, the amount of tissue you take. They're more prone to rejection or migration. Ditoids. Ditoids are best done with curved barbells also. Not also, with curved barbells, because frenums are best done with straight. So, That brings us to scrotum piercings, haftas, and lorums. Lorums sometimes, depending on how pronounced that area is on your body, can be done with a ring initially, or even healed and you can leave it in there. Basically, in essence, it kind of, when we go to lorums, they're either a low frenum or they are a high scrotum piercing. So it depends on your anatomy solely. Scrotum piercings and gishes, for that matter, haftas, need to be done with rings initially. They seem to heal faster and they're less traumatic. Either way, I have done them with barbells and had no issue with it, but it seemed like the barbell sticking out got caught more. At least that was the experience of the client that I'd done them on. He had already had a few with rings, healed them out, had no issues. He wanted to try out a couple barbells, and he hated the barbells. So keep that in mind. So, in conclusion, there is always possibilities with rings or circular jewelry where it is going to work best and work better than post jewelry. The biggest thing is what your anatomy's like. And that's why it's important to go see somebody who knows what they're doing, that has a lot of experience and a lot of training, and looking at someone's anatomy and going, and in their mind's eye, picturing what's going to work or what that jewelry's going to look like in that area, what's going to fit into the flow of the body, and make it more natural to the piercing, to be more natural and fit into the body, and also what jewelry is going to look best and work best there initially. In a lot of cases, you can heal out piercings with barbells and then switch to rings after it heals. That's not always the case, and that's another thing you need to talk about when you go in and get a piercing done. If you're getting your nostril done, you're getting it done with a stud style piece of jewelry, but you want to have that option to get a ring eventually, talk to your piercer about that before you get the piercing done, or while they're marking it, so they can kind of take a look at it and go, well, your crust is way up here, but I'm not going to be able to fit it. There's no ring in God's green earth that's going to be comfortable and look good at that height. So maybe we scoot it down a little bit, or move it or adjust it forward a little bit so that it can accommodate for that ring. But talk to them about it. We don't know unless you tell us. And marking is a collaborative effort to a degree. So that's it for this episode. Or is it an episode, or is it just a video? That's it for this video. I hope you learned something. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. If you have any suggestions, or you feel like I didn't cover something, or you want to expand on something I covered, please leave a comment. I'm happy to discuss those things with you, and I usually answer them on a regular basis. My name is DaVo, by the way. I'm from the Axiom Body Piercing Studio in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Lovely Skin Kitchen. If you're in the Des Moines area, I hope to see you for your piercing needs in the future. And make sure to like the video and subscribe so you get all of our goodness when it comes to videos. Till then, have a good day.